Mixing hits for Green Day, Prince, Springsteen, the Rolling Stones, and many more, Chris Lord-Alge is a legendary mix engineer. And he's a pioneer of the translation of analog-style mixing into the digital world. And not just through his famous CLA plugins, but by crafting his sessions in a way that emulate the analog environment. As an award-winning engineer myself, I've studied CLA for years and have applied his methods to my mixes to also avoid that sterile digital sound. In the modern age, many new mixers avoid this strategy, never having mixed on a console, and their mixes pay the price. By the end of this video, you'll learn how to incorporate a CLA mixing style into your in-the-box setup to bring that analog sound to your mixes. So the idea is CLA will listen to the mix first and then get an idea of what he wants to set up his mixer page like. And typically, he will do this in a way to emulate an analog console setup and some of the patches that he has in his studio. So when we're in the mixer page here, we're going to highlight all the tracks. And the first thing he'll typically do in an in-the-box mix is run an SSL channel strip across all the instruments. So in Pro Tools, that's highlight everything and go Shift Option click. And then we can grab an SSL channel and put that across all the tracks just as a starting point. Now you may have noticed that I opened up these SSL channels on the second insert of each track and I've left the top insert empty. And there's a very specific reason to do with console emulation that we're going to talk about in just a little bit, but that's very important. So make sure to open up the SSL channel on the second insert and leave a space at the top. Now again, you're not 100% decided on if you're going to use all these plugins and if they're going to work, but the idea is to set your mix up in a way so that you're ready with that analog type of sound. Now, where we'll go after that is probably some of the compressors, and CLA likes to typically use his plugins on a lot of the channels. Those are going to be, for example, the CLA 76, the CLA 3A, CLA drums. And so that's what we'll do next. And it's not because those are the only plugins that sound good. It's just that when you're mixing, you want to be using things that sound familiar and that you know really well so you can get a good sound fast. So CLA's approach will typically be to add on the lead vocal, for example, CLA 76, Bluey, and then set the fast release, right? And then he'll copy that over to any other lead vocals. And to switch things up, the background vocals could, for example, do the same, right? And go black. Okay. Now we have some vocal compression going on. Across the drums, we're going to do CLA drums on just a few of the tracks. We'll start with the overheads. So I'm going to go CLA drums. And then set to overheads. I'll copy that over to the room. There's the room. Copy it over to the toms. Set it for toms. And now he's got a starting point for the drums as well. One other thing that he'll typically do off the bat is add some compressors on the guitars. So let's go CLA 3A. Seen this commonly in his mixes. So there's the CLA 3A across the guitars. Again, going, with a variety of options to get a variety of sounds and compression styles with sounds that also typically work really well. We'll go with the CLA Blackie on the bass. And we can copy that over to the tambourine as well. And on the kick and snare, there's a lot of different things that work, but really commonly is this 160 compressor, this one here. He likes to use this with a starting point of a ratio of 2. So we'll put that on kick and snare. And this is a really good starting point for the CLA type of sound. Now on organ and keys, he might try something different. So let's go with the Puig Child, for example. In a moment, we're going to talk about the secret sauce. But first, we'll also get ready with just a few effects that are really common. With CLA, when it comes to vocals, really typical of CLA is to have a plate and a slap. So we'll set those up now. We're going to have a plate reverb. So I'm just going to call that plate. And we'll imagine we put a plate plugin on here. We'll also have set up for us a slap. We're going to put a slap reverb there. There's also the CLA vocal effects, which are really good. And then on drums, he'll typically use some type of a room reverb on these drums. So we'll go room here. There's a room. And this fader just popped up in my other window, so you can see it there. It's just in standby mode, ready to go. We'll bring this over to our other reverbs. And he may also put that room on the toms. Typically, he won't do it on overheads. It just depends. Typically not on the kick. If there are snare samples or any other drum samples, he might add a bit of the room to that. And again, this is just a starting point. Things are going to change and tweak as you mix, but it's just the way you set up the mix for success. All right, now that we've got some plugins on, some effects on, you're probably wondering, okay, what is this space at the top for? Why did we open up the SSL channel on the second insert? And this is because this is where that console emulation is going to come in. This is how CLA makes sure his mixes don't sound too sterile. On just one of the tracks here, we'll open up the NLS channel. This is from Waves. And all these plugins, by the way, I'm going to put links in the description that you can use. And this is just set on the SSL setting. There's different settings here. We'll be on the SSL setting. And then over on this track, we'll open up Virtual Mix Rack from Slate Digital. And the idea here is simply to grab one of the console emulations. This is one that CLA really likes to use commonly. So we'll use this as a starting point. And now what we can do, if for any reason any of the tracks are sounding a bit too sterile while we're mixing, we have a couple different console emulation options that we can drag over onto the tracks just like this. I think that's an extremely cool approach. And again, like we said, you're not 100% decided that all these are going to work, but you're just going to start here and then have somewhere that you can start pushing the faders up with, have this strategy, and with that, you're guaranteed to start with a more analog CLA sounding mix while working in the box. Now, this is a great approach to setting up a Chris Lord-Alge analog style mix. But if you're looking for specific settings for EQ, compression, and more, I have something I think you're gonna love. It's called my home mixing cheat sheet. And this is basically a reference chart with all sorts of go-to settings that I personally use every single day for mixing drums, bass, piano, keys, guitars, vocals, everything's on there, you name it. It's all my go-to settings and even some possible effects that sound good for each of those instruments and elements in your song. It's absolutely free. The link is in the description, so you can go and download that now. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more. And as always, happy mixing and see you next time.